Welcome to the Code With Me videos for Chapter 9. Chapter 9 will be a little different than the other Code With Me videos because Chapter 9 has a lot to cover and we have just about one activity for every item that we're going to cover. So first thing, make sure you have your Chapter 9 files open in brackets and go ahead and open up the process form file inside the Chapter 9 folder of the student data files and then internship. So go ahead and open up process form in a browser. And you'll notice that nothing was submitted. Well, that means that basically what we have here is a form processor. And the form processor is written in JavaScript. Don't worry if you don't understand it all. Once we actually get some information and send it to this form, it will display the information that we've submitted. So, make sure to close this and open up the apply file in brackets. There we go. All right, what we're going to do is click at the blank line on line 12 and add a form tag. And we're closing a form tag. But don't forget, forms also need two necessary attributes, the action and the method. In this case, the action will be the file we just opened up, so processform.html. Because the form handler was written in JavaScript, we can use a .html extension because we have JavaScript inside the file. I can go into the technicalities of this, but that's a little more advanced for this class. Next, what we're doing is we're actually using the method get. What that means is that the data from the form will actually be submitted in the URL right here. So let's save this. Let's go and open up the apply file. And, well, there's not much here except for the h1, the h2, and the p tag. That's because a form by itself doesn't do anything. But this is activity 9.1. Next, for activity 9.2, we're going to open up we're going to go inside the form tag, and we're going to add input type equals text. Now, if you recall from the previous activity, the form handler documentation said to use a name attribute for every form field. You will ignore that for now so that you can see what the problem it causes later. Save your changes and refresh the apply page in Chrome. And now you see that we have a text field that you can write anything inside of it. Okay. Luckily, that's it for 9.2. 9.3 will actually be adding an ID to this. And this ID is going to be first name. Now, don't forget that IDs are only unique to the page itself. That means that if you have multiple items on a site, you can have the same IDs for different items, but in this case, since we're dealing with the same page, we want this ID to be unique. But additionally, what we're doing is we're actually adding a label. And the label by itself says first name. But that's not enough. What we want to do is we want to make it so that when someone clicks on the label or navigates to it, they will automatically go to the next input field. So for this, we say for first name, making sure that this and this match up. So that way, we save, we refresh, we have the label, we have the text box, and if you click on the label, notice where the mouse is, click on the label, you automatically can start typing inside the text box. Okay, well, we don't have much to do with the form yet, so next what we're going to do is we're actually going to be adding a submit button. So keep in mind that anything you have inside the form, including submit buttons, must be inside the form tags. So in this case, input type equals submit, value equals apply. Now, if you recall from the latest lecture, we could do this with button. Say button, type submit, and then we can say apply because button does not use the value attribute. So in this case, line 15 and line 16 do the exact same thing. But for this demonstration, let's just do line 15, save, refresh. Now I have a blank field. We click on the label, we add something that is here to the box, and we click apply. What happened? Well, as you can see, we used a method of get, and the data was supposed to be in the URL, but there's no data that's submitted. So what happened? Well, this is exactly why we left the name out, because by leaving the name out of the input type means that, well, we have nothing to submit because the form doesn't have any way to store that information in a variable. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to be adding that right here. Name equals first name. Now again, for 99% of things, you want the name and the ID to be the exact same. That way it's easier to navigate, easier to find, and easier to manipulate once you actually get into the hard code of the forms. So we save, we refresh, we say something that is here again, click apply, and look, hey, first name, something that is here. First name is the name that we provided our text box, and something that is here was inside the box to begin with. So if we change that first name of the name itself to best name, we save, we refresh, we always refresh, we add something new, we click apply, and look, best name is something new. That's because the name right here is the variable name that the data has been stored in. Even though the ID is first name, the name is best name, and that's what gets transferred. If you also pay attention to the URL, you can see that the best name right here equals something plus new. Well, that means that best name is the variable, the question mark is the separator between the file itself and the variables being passed, and then something plus new is the URL encoded data variable format to say, hey, this plus is a space, because URLs don't do good with spaces. So in that case, it has a plus sign, and it has the data something new after it, which means that something new is right here. Okay, so let's go back to the code, and for activity 9.5, we're going to be adding extra space, and we're going to be adding a line break. So right here, line 13, we got 12, 13, good. Remove any space between it and the label and tap enter. Well, we did that, okay. Click the right of the, there is no BR tag. Okay, we're adding a BR tag. Okay, BR tag, and an extra line between those two. Now we save, we refresh, and now you can see apply is on its own separate line. The same information can still be passed, but in this case, whoop, forgot to change that back to first name, there we go. In this case, we still have the same information being passed, and this way, it makes it a little easier to use instead of having the button over here. All right. Next, we're going to be adding the other field for last name. So we have the line break. Let's go down here, label for last name. We're already identifying this even though the field itself does not exist. That is okay for now. Label, input type equals text, ID equals what? Last name, and name equals last name. I know I'm saying name a lot for this. That's only because, well, the name is an attribute, and name is something we're using in the field. So we save, we refresh, and now we have first name and last name. Let's just check something. Good. First name John, last name Smith. We're good to go. All right. Below that, 2 lines below last name, we're going to add label for email. Email, easy as that. Input type, email, because that's going to add a nice little client-side data validation checker. ID equals email, name equals email. Nice and easy. And of course our line break. Save, refresh, email shows up. Perfect. So John Smith, john@smith.com. There we go, good. Now keep in mind that if you do not have the @ sign in an email field, then it's going to say, hey, this doesn't have an @ sign. So make sure you add an @ sign, because otherwise, well, it's not a valid email. And ending a statement with an @ sign by itself is not a valid email. So you need to have at least something after it. Is this a valid email? Well, according to the browser, it is, because this can be a local network email. That's a little more technical than we'll get into. Okay, next. Line 22, label for password. And yes, the type, the ID, and the name can all be the same thing. Password. Create a password. Input type, password, easy. ID, password, name, password. You can change this if you want to things like PW or password1, something that is uniquely identifiable so that the information being passed can easily be found. Okay, in this case, we are going to change it to PW. Again, the ID and the name need to stay the same for this case. We save, we refresh, and now create a password. Well, you can't see what I'm typing here, but I am typing a lot of stuff, and it's just being obfuscated by little dots. That's perfectly okay. The good thing is that as soon as you type in a password and you click apply, your form handler will easily be able to see what the password was that was being created. Okay, that's a lot of gobbledygook. Let's go back and do something nice and simple. Apply, nice and simple. Look at that. So even though you can't see what I'm typing here, the form handler will be able to see. Now keep in mind, this is where a security issue can happen. If you actually type in my unique password in a password field and then use the method get, the information is being passed via the URL, which means as soon as we click this button and send the data to the form handler can see it. But additionally, the URL can also see it. So never send passwords using the get method. We'll get to the post method in just a minute. Okay, for 9.8, we're going to be adding a telephone field, label for phone. Phone, no one actually uses telephone anymore, right? Closing label tag, input type, tel, not phone, tel. ID, phone, name, phone. Now don't forget that the tel type doesn't do anything in the browser. In fact, it actually manages it back to a default text style, but in this case, it just gives you a good example of how to modify things for mobile environments so that when someone comes to this field, instead of a standard keyboard, they will have a number keypad instead. Next, label for portfolio. What does that mean? Well, in this case, we're asking for a URL to online portfolio. Now, don't forget that the input type URL requires something very specific to URLs. Portfolio, yes, name portfolio. And that means that as soon as you type something into this, it has to have something in order for it to properly be passed. So we save, we refresh, and if I were just to type in example, click apply, please enter a URL. Well, what makes a URL? A URL consists of a TLD, right? No. It consists of an @ sign. No. Well, what does it consist of? A protocol. In this case, http://example.com is a perfect URL. Click apply, and there we go, example.com with the protocol HTTP. If we were to say example Is that a valid URL? Yes, it is, because this can also be located as a network address, so therefore it is a valid uniform resource locator. Okay, next we're going to be adding a label for a resume. And what format is a resume in? Upload your resume. Input type file. ID, resume, name, resume. Now, unfortunately, if we try to save and refresh this, you can see that it has a file picker. In this case, you can choose a file. In this case, I'm going to just choose a standard file and upload. Well, the file or the form handler told me what the file name was, but the problem is, well, our form handler doesn't know what to do with it because there's nothing here to do with. Once you get into more advanced systems such as PHP or Python or even ASP, you'll be able to do something with this form other than just display it back to us. Okay, next we're going to add label for start date. That's weird. Date you can scan, date you can start work. Label, input, type, what are we looking for here? Looking for a date. ID, start date, because this and this must match. Name equals start date. BR. Okay, save, refresh. And as you can see, this automatically pre-fills it with the 2-month, 2-day, and 4-year pre-filling, which also allows us to easily choose the date we want to actually, in this case, start work. I want to say October 24th. Hey, look at that, 10/24/2008. I click apply, and it automatically formats it to 4-year, 2-month, 2-day, because in a technical standpoint, this is the best way to format a date, so it's easy to understand for everyone. Now, before we jump into the next activity, I want to take all this code and run it through the validator really quick to show you a nice little example of what you'll see when running through the validator. Because chances are you'll run across this exact error and you're going to tell me it's an error when in fact it is not. The validator will tell you that, hey, the date format, I have an issue there. There we go. The date format is not supported in all browsers. Be sure to test and consider using a polyfill. Well, chances are you don't know what a polyfill is, but the first part is saying, hey, the date input type is not supported in all browsers, so you may want to consider an alternative. This is just a warning. That's okay. For what we're doing, a warning is perfectly fine. The error, however, is not, but I've corrected that. So, with that, please keep in mind when you're validating the date field that it is going to give you a warning, and warnings are okay in this example. All right, next activity. This is going to be restricting the date range. So in this case, we're actually going to modify the input type date. Min equals 2018-09-30. We're going to put it in the nice computer format. And max equals 2018-10-31. Ooh, not giving us much of an option here. Okay, save, refresh. And now we see, the computer's smart enough to say that we have a minimum of 2018 September 30th and maximum 2018 October 31st, which means it knows to automatically format the year field with 2018 because that's the only option you have. So in this case, we can choose, we only have October to choose from. Well, that's okay because it's October now. So I want to say I'm going to start October 31st. Apply, not a problem. But if I want to say I'm going to start, come on, November 1st. November 1st. November 2nd, November 3rd. Well, those dates are outside of the range, and I honestly can't go past it. And I can't go before October 1st, or in this case, September 30th. So I can't choose any other dates. It's not going to let me, because I've already specified the minimum and the maximum of the dates that can be selected. All right. The last activity for this video was activity 912. In this case, we're going to be adding label for hours. How many hours per week can you commit to? Closing label, input type. What do we need here? We need a number field, otherwise known as a spinner. ID equals hours, name equals hours, and BR. Okay, we save, we refresh, and as you can see, it automatically adds the up and the down arrows so we can actually tell it what numbers we want to insert. Can we insert letters? No, we cannot. We can only insert numbers. So, how many hours per week can I commit to? I'm going to say -5. Apply, and that works, only because I have not specified what number I want to be in between. So in this case, I can say min equals 4. So a minimum of 4 hours, in this case, per week. And I also want to increase the step to 2. Well, let's take that one at a time. Let's actually take the step out first and show you what the min does. Hopefully you know what the min does from the date. So we refresh. How many hours per week can you commit to? 0. Value must be greater than or equal to 4. Okay. 3. Value must be greater than or equal to 4. 4. Apply. That works. What about 40,000? That works, even though I don't know how you put 40,000 hours in a week. So, if I use 4 and then use the up or the down arrow, the up arrow increases it by 1. The down arrow decreases it by 1 until it gets to the minimum. You can also use maximum here if you want, but we're not going to for this example. Instead, we're going to use a step of 2, which means that once you save and refresh, you put in any number, let's start with 4, and you press the up or down arrow, or use the up or down arrow in the actual text field. It'll actually jump by 2 numbers every single time. And it's not just for even numbers. You say 21. Go up. Okay, it's going to round it to 22, 24, 26. What if we say step of 20? Save, refresh. 4, 24, 44. Well, what if we say 36? It's going to round it to the next available step. In this case, 20 and 4. So that is the minimum, and then steps of 20 from there. In this case, 24, etc. But in this case, we're going to keep things simple. Step of 2. Okay, so 4, 6, 8. Let's just go John Smith, john@smith.com. Create a password, my unique password, phone, 828-555-1234. Online portfolio, mycoolsite.com. Upload resume, get the same one, date I can start to work, let's just say Halloween, and hours per week. Before I click apply, what is wrong here? If you said the URL, you're correct, because the URL does require a protocol, and the protocol is http://. Or you could say HTTPS. That's a protocol too. Apply. And now it says everything I just submitted, including my password. So that is it for the first Code With Me video for Chapter 9. In the next one, we'll be talking about more advanced guided choices and even some uncommon input types. So if you have any questions regarding this or Chapter 9, please send me an email or hit me up on Twitter. I'll get back to you with the best possible answer.